My first contact with meditation was when I was 15 in 1979. I went with a group to Thésée, with a group of the church. And there, I didn't know anything about that before, but it was a very big thing for me to be in this big church with all the people singing. And then in the center, there is always a time of 15, 20 minutes of silence, where without any instruction or so, just sitting in silence. And in the end, beginning and end, these beautiful songs of Thésée, which are very meditative too. So, and this was this kind of spirituality accompanied me maybe till the end of my studies of theology that started a few years later, because there were always groups of Thésée groups in the students' parishes where I was, and at some point also where I was hired for, had a little job there. But this was with 15. I had this for a year, and then I went to, I came into drugs like hashish and LSD later on. And this was kind of, with LSD, I didn't know anything about spiritual states of experiences and all that. But in a way, I had some very potent states with LSD especially, which I only found out later when I started meditating, or meditated already for a few years, a state where there was no I there. I was in my first LSD trip, people asked me, "Oh, how are you? How is it going?" And I said, "I'm not there." But that I was about 3 years in this drug scene, one can say. And then I had in a disco an inner movement to say the Our Father prayer. And a little later, I had, somebody told me about a spiritistic seance she was in. And I never heard about these things before. But a little later, I found the book of Allan Kardec, the Book of Spirits. And this initiated what one can call a metanoia, a change from a, in that time, more atheistic ideology or mood I had, to a spiritual mood. That was with 19. And a little later, I started to read about yoga. So there was one book after the other, and very important was the autobiography of a yogi. And that brought me to, I want to lead a spiritual life. I want to practice yoga. I want to, no, that was in the end of high school. But then I thought, what God will show me what I have to do. And so 1 month after I had my graduation in high school, I had the intuition to study theology, because I thought these things that I found in Yogananda, in the Indian culture, should be there in Christianity also. And so I want to devote my studies to the dialogue between Christianity, the religion I was born in, and Hinduism or yoga, or later Buddhism came to it too. And so I started for myself to sit in the lotus posture and headstand with books I found. And then when I started theology in Tübingen, I had my first yoga course, which was also in the Catholic students' parish. So I started to practice that regularly and with great ambition to become enlightened at some point. And a year later, Michael von Brück, my a Zen and yoga teacher, and also my later on my doctoral advisor, came to Tübingen, and he started with us. He was in India for 5 years and was student of Zen, and started with us Zen and yoga regularly at the university. And then in '86, it was the first session where I had my first deep experience with meditation. And then I went deeply into Zen, always in connection with yoga, because that's his specialty. Like he morning and evening, there is an hour of physical exercise, and to the strict sitting during the day. So why did I start meditating? Because I wanted to have these experiences I read about in the books, and I had the feeling this is the essence of religion. I started studying theology to also have a what can one do? I'm Protestant. As a spiritual profession, you can become either a theologian at the university or you become a pastor. And so I was more or less on the way to become a pastor, and I wanted to integrate these spiritual exercises that I found in the Eastern traditions, coming to me by Michael von Brück, who was in a way in the tradition of Father La Salle, the Jesuit, and then Henri Le Sceau, Swami Abhishektananda, and Panikkar. Panikkar and Beat Griffiths. Panikkar and Beat Griffiths were his teachers also, and also La Salle. Well, Michael von Brück, of course, was the most important, because I became his student intellectually as well as spiritually. And after some years, he asked me if I want to give introductory courses into Zen and yoga for people who want to come to his session. So he was the main influence. He's a Protestant theologian from Eastern Germany at that time, GDR, and Father La Salle, from the early 70s on, he came each year to East Germany to give sessions, and he attended that, and then he wrote his doctoral thesis on the theology of religions, and then had the opportunity to come to India through the Lutheran World Foundation, I think, and had 1 year of study after his doctoral thesis in India. And there he met Beat Griffiths. He spent a lot of time in Shantivanam Ashram. And after that, he didn't go back to the GDR, but used the money for the return flight to go to Japan and stayed there for half a year. And first with Father La Salle, and then in Kyoto with a Rinzai Zen master, Hirata Roshi. And then he went back to the GDR with the Trans-Siberian Railway. And then a few years later, he had his practical, his vicariat, his internship in the church, and became pastor. And then he was married. The first children were there. And then he had the opportunity to go for 5 years to Madras at that time. Today it's called Chennai, to teach in the Lutheran college there. And that was for 5 years. And there, of course, it all deepened. Each year he went to Japan to go for a month of sessions, and then became friends with the Dalai Lama and all those people. He came back to Germany, but not to East Germany anymore, but he stayed in the West, and was then in Tübingen, came to Tübingen. He was hired by Hans Küng, the famous theologian, in his institute for ecumenical research. and started to write a book on the dialogue of Buddhism and Christianity. Buddhismus und Christentum. I think a part of it is translated into English also, together with an American Chinese scholar, Waylon Lai, from University of California. And so I studied with him since '85 at the university. Well, the Yogananda was my entrance into the world of spirituality and all those, what is possible there with all these different states of experiential states and cities that one can have and that. But then for the Zen practice, the first, I think, 2 or 3 years, I didn't read any literature on Zen. I just focused on the practice. But later on, when I started to teach myself, I of course used texts, and most important for me were the Koan, how you call it, Koan Sammlungen, Koan, like Mumon Kan and Heikigan Roku, with whom you also practice in the koans. And Michael von Brück, I did some koan practice with him, and I had experiences with that, and well, they became important then for my own practice, that I worked with koans and did that more or less on myself, because after a while I stopped the koan practice because I had severe problems, also health problems, that came with this focusing on satori, on enlightenment experience. I had some experiences, but then I wanted to have them again. The experiences like when you focus on one thing, and then it gets very, your consciousness gets unified in a way, and then at one point it opens up, and this and this then goes by itself. So this is not no more you that are doing something like concentrating or what, but the concentration falls away, and kind of the spirit takes over. Mm-hmm. But this goes on for a while, and then it goes away again, and you again in your ego and all, and then you want to have it again. I really tried hard, and the result was I got ulcers, like duodenal ulcers. And so I had to change for years. I had to change something, and it took quite a while till I figured that out. And one thing was, I was at another session with a Soto master, Kobun Chino Roshi. And he had a different approach. In the Soto Zen, you don't focus on this breakthrough experience. You just sit, yeah? And sitting, however it is already enlightenment. I got a little more relaxed in my approach to the meditation. And up to that point that I didn't go to sessions anymore with Michael von Brück, also because I didn't have the money. And on the other hand, I had I got married and children, and there was the time, no more time anymore that I could have so a lot of time outside for going to sessions. So I kind of went only to my own courses. So I was my own teacher at that time, and more or less until now. And I had books that helped me. And there were different phases, but the very important later on was Sri Aurobindo, the integral yoga approach, which broadened my my view of what spirituality is about, and also what meditation is a part of spirituality, but is not the whole of spirituality. It's like you learn to concentrate, you can go into deeper states like samadhi, but then you come out, and the main thing is the transformation of consciousness also in the everyday life, which in his approach, integral yoga is very much through karma yoga, through working in the world. The challenges that life gives, how you deal with it, these everyday things, is much more important. It wasn't important for me before, only enlightenment was important. I started where I had my first session with Michael was the Zentrum für Meditation und Begegnung Neumühle in Saarland in Western Germany, which is still existing, and where I started like 8 years later, I started to give my own introductory courses and still do. So Neumühle is called, a new mill in English. And a meditation center. And another one is, I went in 88, the first time to India, Shantivanam Ashram became important. Pete Griffiths, I met Pete Griffiths there, I had interviews with him, and since then I was there maybe 15 times or so in Shantivanam, which became an important place. Then in Austria, Haus der Stille in Purek, where I started to give courses, yoga and Zen, in the late, like 2009 or so. So these are places where I have my own intensive practice periods. Also Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Arunachala, Rishikesh were important places. Also I had 2 pilgrimages to Gangotri, in the source of the Ganges. And well, what I do nearly every day is that in the morning after I sit for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then do yoga practice for 15 or 20 or 45 minutes. It depends. So I don't have a strict time schedule anymore, but I integrate it to what else is there in the day. And often during the day, I find times to sit also, like spontaneously, when I feel like, oh, now I have time, or now I need it to sit for, like, be it 5 minutes, be it 15, 20, or even 2 hours. And but it's not like a regular thing anymore. The regular thing is in the morning.
Okay.
And I sit in the way of Zen, but not too strongly focused. So I have different focus points in the body, the belly, like usually in Zen, but also the heart or the head, or even above the head, I focus.
Sure. Thank you.
Or also words like of the Bible, or Zen sayings, or Bhagavad Gita verses. So this comes into. It was this, I want this, my willful, I want to reach something, which is of course also important. Yeah, you don't go into it if you don't have a strong motivation. I want this. But this was a big difficulty, which also, as I said, led to these health problems. And today, the difficulty is, yeah, sometimes I feel, well, I could have reached more. But then also to accept myself as I am with my limitations, and also accept the gifts that I got and be grateful for that. Also with my family, and also professionally, I have not made a career much, and so sometimes I have regrets of that. But on the other hand, it's nothing really bad happened, and it's and the when you have the you become a big guru or something like that, it has also its difficulties, and I guess this is not what I'm supposed to do. I go my way for myself and share what I learned with a few other people, and that's okay. And I think in the past, before mass media, that was the normal thing. In the deep layers of life, there is this bliss, what in the India they call Ananda. And then when I sit for longer, an hour, 2 hours, then a, a, a vigorous energy is there. When I feel like, oh, I don't want to work or so, I'm too tired, or feel depressed also. When I sit down for a while, this changes, and then comes the energy to overcome obstacles, and also not to really be great and big, but to go a realistic way of, I write the book, the next sentence or the next paragraph, and so, and this energy that comes from meditation, going into the deeper layers of the soul, and so has its wonderful and beautiful rewards, even if it's not like one perhaps wants to or imagines in the ego, but which is how, in a way that is good. There is, if you do it in a very in a fanatic way, well, it can be a phase. Perhaps it's also necessary that you have a period of time where you do it really. If you look from outside, it's a fanatic. They would say, oh, he's very fanatic in that. He doesn't look at the rest of life, but only does that. And perhaps that's an important experience also. But I think that's a danger if you don't get a little more softer in that. But perhaps other people, for them, it's necessary. For me, it felt, it made me sick. So that is what I learned from that. I think that we are not, we have today this broad spectrum of cultures that we can know about through, not only through reading, but also through traveling and meeting teachers from all kinds of traditions. And I met quite a lot, and I learned from all of them. And I think this was not so much there in the past. Of course, in India, they had many traditions and different teachers with different approaches, and people often went from teacher to teacher and learned. But I think the main difference is what Aurobindo calls the old yoga and his integral yoga. The old yogas, they were focusing on a state beyond. In Christianity, they wanted to go to paradise. And in Hinduism, they didn't want to be reborn. So they wanted to transcend this life on earth and in the manifestation totally. And that was their goal. And from Aurobindo, I learned that is one part of the way. And then you come back and bring down what you learned from your spiritual experiences to change life on earth. Or in his view, it is you contribute to the evolution of life on earth with also with your yoga, with your spirituality. And so this being more centered on the life on earth than on the life beyond, I think that's a difference also in how people meditated in former times, and how it is becoming much more widespread also in the the traditional traditions. It's focusing the mind on the divine. So my advice would be get yourself good maps. Go your own way according to your inner truth. Be open for critical perspectives by teachers you meet, by also people who criticize spirituality and that, because they also have something important to say. But do not lose faith in the path.